Welcome to The Liberation Effect with me, your host, Helen Villas. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of The Liberation Effect. Today I'm talking to Lucy, who has contacted me about talking about hope in a relationship with somebody who is emotionally abusive, toxic, narcissistic maybe, and how that could maybe impact how you navigate that relationship. Lucy, I'm actually going to hand it straight over to you to just explain what it is that you're looking to get out of today's session, what you're stumbling over, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
So the reason that I wanted to speak to you really was that I have, for the last 18 months or so, I've been talking to my dad about my upbringing and the emotionally abusive relationship that I feel I've had with my stepmother, his wife,
Right.
since I was very little.
Mm-hmm.
And I've also spoken to my stepmother, and we're no longer in contact at the moment. So I'm still in touch with my dad, but not with her. And one of the hardest things I think has been kind of coming to terms with the fact that he had a lot more to do with what was difficult for me than I had ever realized. I always saw him as the safe parent and the kind parent, and we had a really, really good relationship. And I'm still struggling to try and, sorry, I don't know what I'm finding with the
It's
song.
all right. It's okay.
I'm struggling to not keep expecting him to support me and kind of believe me, which he basically hasn't done. So since I started speaking about my stepmother's behaviour, he has very much been on her side and feels that I somehow got all this wrong and made it up potentially. And I keep kind of telling myself that if we just keep having one more conversation, I'm going to be able to convince him. And then it doesn't happen and I feel heartbroken, and we just keep going through this cycle. And so I suppose what I wanted to talk about was the fact that even though it was hard sort of coming to terms with how my stepmother had behaved and kind of understanding that it was abusive, it's been much harder realizing that he actually had quite a lot of responsibility in that as well. And that he isn't quite the person I always thought he was.
That's intensely painful. And there's that thing of, it's not just the hope of him, it's the kind of worldview hope of, well, at least I had one good parent. At least I had one person. So before we just sort of leap in, could you just explain a little bit of the kind of family system in terms of where your mother was, what siblings you have, and
of course,
what age with your stepmother, what age you were when your stepmother came into your life?
Yeah, of course. I think I had quite an unusual childhood. My mum and my dad got divorced when I was about 4 years old, and they both remarried quite quickly. I think by the time I was about 6, they were both remarried.
Right.
But we all stayed living in the same house.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, until I was 14.
Until you were 14?
Yeah. So the house was quite big. It was a bit of an unusual house itself, and they did kind of divide it into two, but we were all still in the same building until I was 14, which is when my dad and my stepmom bought a different house. So there was myself and my older brother, who's 2 years older than me, and then my younger half brother, who is my mum and my stepdad's son. He was born when I was 10. So I would say that I probably spent the majority of the time with my mum, but because we were living basically in the same building, I was back and forth to each one quite a lot. I feel like my mum did quite a lot of the kind of day-to-day, taking us to school, making us our tea kind of stuff. Whereas I spent weekends with my dad and stepmom, and we did kind of a lot of the fun things with my dad. So a lot of the memories I have in childhood of being with my dad are doing fun things like going swimming and going on little adventures and stuff. Yeah, so it was an unusual setup that we were all in such close proximity. And there's probably stuff to say about all of my parents, but it's the relationship that I had with my stepmom was the one that that made me the most uncomfortable, and I felt quite scared of her, and I didn't feel that way about any of my other parents. And she was definitely the kind of authority figure in the family. She was also quite
of all of you, sorry, of the whole
I would say,
system.
I would say of all.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was never particularly authoritative. He wasn't very strict. He never got angry. I can't remember ever seeing him angry. And my mum as well was also quite a kind of mild-mannered person.
Right.
My stepdad didn't really get involved with parenting. He was quite kind of distant. So it was my stepmom really that if I was going to be in trouble with somebody, it would be with her. She was also quite a lot younger than my other parents, and I have absolutely no issue with big age gaps in relationships, but I do feel like it's relevant in that she was 21 when she married my dad. He was 39. So she's actually closer to mine and my brother's age. She's 15 years older than me.
Right.
And 13 years older than my brother, and had not long been out of her own, family home. And she would talk about her parents and say that they were very abusive. She had a very negative relationship with them when we were younger, and they didn't want to know us. So she was quite vocal about that, about the fact that they didn't want to be our grandparents and weren't interested in us, and they didn't approve of her marrying my dad. And actually, as I kind of grew up, a lot of what she told me about her relationship with her mum was very, very similar to the way that she would behave towards me, but she didn't seem to see the parallel. Yeah, so that's to give you a overview. Yeah. That's what the family looked like. I mean, and I didn't have any cousins or aunties or uncles, so there was all of us there, and then there wasn't really anyone else.
Was it? So just you guys in that house?
Yeah.
Okay. And so, gosh, that dynamic's intensely, that's very interesting. Apart from being quite intense on its own, the age gap, it's an interesting thing, age gaps, right? Because part of me is sort of in this space of, well, autonomy and everyone can, make decisions and adults and, whatever. But 21 and 39 are huge. If a 40-year-old married, a 60-year-old, I probably wouldn't think much of it, because those are two lives that have been lived. That's a level of maturity you've got life experience. But I probably still would be like, you haven't got the same cultural references. And I wouldn't, not judgmental in a nasty way, I would just think about the fact that there was a big gap. I wouldn't be... But 21 and 39, a 21-year-old doesn't have life experience. Do you remember yourself at 21?
Yeah, and absolutely.
I don't want to suggest everyone was like me or you at 21, but at 21, you're only just starting to really understand the world. You don't, you might not know how to do a lot of stuff even at that age. And I think there's a level of emotional immaturity still there. Your brain still isn't fully formed anyway. And that is a big age gap, not because of the amount of years, but in terms of the emotional maturity and life experience.
Absolutely.
39-year-old, they'll have built a career. They'll have obviously been married and had children before maybe, and not necessarily always. But it's I suppose it's that thing of age gaps in context maybe.
Yeah. I feel like I always like to say it's not about the age gap, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm judging. You know, lots of people, there's a bit of an age gap between me and my husband. I don't think it necessarily means anything negative, but I think where I feel like it's important in this context is that this was someone who was 21 and had suddenly become a parent to a 6 and an 8-year-old. So there's to be at that age and to be a parent to 2 children who are not much younger than you.
I mean, she would have been 15 when your brother was born.
So she's 13 years older than my brother.
So 13 and then 15
years older than me.
So 13 years old when your brother was born.
Yeah.
Which is very young. And again, I know there are children that have, I know that the teen pregnancy. So it's not, but it's a different thing rather, because she's being a step parent. So it's not even her child.
No,
very
I think,
young.
Yeah, to come in to being a parent suddenly at that stage as well. If we were much younger children and she was kind of getting into becoming our step parent when we were quite a lot younger,
yes,
I feel like that could be somehow easier. But coming in when you're at that age where you're already old enough that you kind of, I don't know, have opinions, and I feel like the age gap is significant, and just her being so young. I mean, it must have been very difficult, I imagine, but particularly living in a house with your new husband's ex-wife, and then caring for the 2 children, and on top of that, my dad has said this in conversations that we've had, he kind of allowed her to be the authority figure. He was happy for her to take that on. So how
do you feel about that?
I find it, I mean, as a parent myself, I just find that amazing that somebody would just kind of pass that off to someone else, particularly a step parent who's so much younger and who has no experience of, who has no children themselves. So to just kind of allow them to make those decisions.
There's such an abdication of responsibility in it.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's what I'm hearing, is him just going, well, you can raise the children. I'm not interested, sort of thing. Or not interested, but and then even it more was just to contrast that even with, this might be quite difficult to hear, the idea that your mum was doing the school runs, the dinners, the day-to-day, you said literally the day-to-day stuff. Yeah. And that for me, what you're saying there is she's doing the parenting labour. She's doing all the emotional, mental load labour, right? And then you go to him and it's all fun dad time.
Absolutely.
So
I think that's very much how it was.
And then, okay, so he's the responsibility of you day to day, even though he's in the same building, is given to your mother.
Yeah.
And then when you're with him, it's given to your stepmother.
Yeah.
Where is he taking any responsibility for parenting you?
Well, I feel that what he really wanted was to be the fun person, to be the one who is loved the most, I think. And I think that he really, I think what my dad likes is for people to really love him and to have 2 children who loved him and looked up to him. And he didn't want to have to deal with any of the difficult stuff, telling us off, making us do boring things that we didn't want to do. And he's managed to find a way to pass off all those other responsibilities onto other people and just focus on the things that made us think he was great. Because when you're a small child, you're not thinking, oh, it's not fair that my mum always has to do the dishes. And you just think, oh, my dad's so great because he takes us swimming. My mum's really boring because she's always doing the dishes. It wasn't until years later that I actually started to really think about that and think, probably would have loved to have not been doing those things. And why didn't she ever get to do the fun stuff? We always did the fun stuff with him. And as a result, I thought he was the best. Because he never got cross and he never told us off, because my stepmom did that instead.
So when you saw that sort of disparity in responsibility, how did that impact your relationship with your father?
So I didn't really see it. And I mean, I didn't acknowledge it until much later. I think it's probably not really until I had my own children that I really started to look at how those kind of things were divided amongst my parents. You know, because when you have your own children, suddenly you've got all these different situations that come up where you automatically think back, well, how was this dealt with when I was little? And that really made me start to examine the fact that I always associated him with just having fun and you know, doing really nice things. And I realised that is what he always did, and my mum always had to do the stuff that I was now doing with my own children and washing the clothes and, you know, trying to get them to sleep. But I think I still didn't quite. I think I just kept telling myself for quite a long time that however this had happened, it was probably something everybody wanted, and it wasn't his fault, and it was, you know, because he's such a nice guy, and he's always been so lovely, and it can't possibly have been anything that he'd done wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it was still a lot of denial for a long time about how much responsibility should really be on his shoulders about a lot of things. Yeah.
So just for my own clarification, I suppose, from when you leave this session today, what is it that you most need to take away from it, do you think?
I think I need to be able to, I'd like to be able to communicate with my dad and talk about how I feel, and not end up feeling like I've got everything wrong, like I'm being unfair, or I always feel that I start a conversation with him knowing how I feel, knowing that I believe myself and my own experiences, and along the way I start to feel guilty and that maybe I've got it wrong, or that I'm being unkind to him and that I'm hurting his feelings. And then I kind of back down, and I don't always say exactly what I'd like to say, because then I feel I might be hurting him, and then I'll go away again and I'll think, why didn't I challenge him on something that he said, or why didn't I disagree with him, or why was I so worried about saying that in case it would upset him? Because I'm trying to be more open and honest about how I feel, and I'm trying to challenge him, but then when it comes to it, I feel like I'm being mean to someone who's just so nice. I think that's the main problem with communicating with my dad, is that he comes across really, really nice, and it makes it feel mean if you're kind of being angry with him. But it does mean that he doesn't have to deal with any hard questions or
isn't it? Doesn't it just? So if he, well, I suppose I'm going to ask, what's the fear of hurting him? What would happen if you hurt him?
I don't really know. It's just, it was never, as long as I can remember, I've not wanted to hurt or upset him, because it felt wrong to do that. And I've always felt like I needed his approval and his for him to like me. Like, that felt like that was the most important thing.
Okay.
So to hurt him it felt wrong. I don't know if I feel like that now, and obviously, that because that's kind of why I'm here. I feel like I've got to the point where I can recognize that, but I still feel like I end up back in these same kind of patterns of worrying about hurting his feelings. I think it's just always been ingrained in me that I don't want to upset him. I want him to be happy with me.
There's something very telling in that you feel that way, that to upset him would make you a bad person.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering where you learned that.
Yeah. I think that I have always had this belief that he is a really good person. And the more that I kind of understand how things were when I was growing up, and some of the ways that I know he's behaved, which I've only learned kind of later on as an adult, I think I realise that that's not the case, but it's like it's conditioned in me that he is a really good person, and that I should look up to him, and I shouldn't disappoint him
by holding him accountable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if I hold him accountable, that actually means I'm mean. So if I say, Dad, you've done this thing and it hurts me, that makes me a mean person.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's happening for you just there? What do you feel?
Well, because I have done that in the last sort of 18 months, when I first sat down with my dad and started saying to him, which I'd never said before, I feel like my stepmom is emotionally abusive. I feel like she's always been this way. And I feel like you've kind of ignored it, and you've never sort of stood up and protected me. And just saying it, made me feel, even though I believed that I had been treated really badly, and that I deserved to be able to speak about it and to have someone apologize for it, I still felt bad for saying it to him because of how it hurt him. Very upset. It's hurt his feelings a lot. He's very upset that I feel the way that I do about her. He thinks that there must be something else that has happened to me in my life that has made me think that, and that I must be mistaken about my stepmom, which I know that I'm not.
Right.
So, yeah.
So wait, hang on. Sorry, hang on.
No,
so you
please.
went to him and said, she did all this stuff. I believe her to be emotionally abusive. And his response was to essentially say, your recollection is wrong. Something else must have happened for you to be able to be thinking this way, rather.
Yeah.
And do you hear what he did in that moment?
Well, I suppose dismissed me. I don't know.
And what else?
Well, he didn't validate how I felt.
Okay, but not just that. What else? That is literal gaslighting.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because not only did he deny, dismiss, minimize, he twisted it to be that it's a problem with you.
Yeah.
In that something else has, as in your perception, your mind is wrong, your memory is wrong, something's influenced you into believing this thing, and you can't be having your own independent, autonomous thoughts about your lived experience. That there's essentially something there's a mental deficit.
Yeah.
And how is that feeling as I'm saying that?
It's very validating, actually, because...
Okay, good.
Because that is... I found it really frustrating. Him and I have had several conversations about this. And
Right.
each time he's asked me lots of questions about other relationships in my life, other friendships and romantic relationships. And he said, I'm trying to work out what could have happened that's made you feel this way. And I've said, I've told you what's happened that's made me feel this way. But he won't accept that. And he thinks that something else must have happened that's somehow caused me to believe these things that he thinks aren't true. And specific kind of memories that I've used as examples of my stepmother's behaviour, he said that he has no recollection of those things happening, and that she said she has no recollection of them happening. And it does just has made me question at times, and it's made it really hard for me to validate myself. Because when I first went and spoke to him, I'd spent quite a long time reading about emotional abuse. I'd been listening to your podcast for a long time. I felt like I'd found all these other stories that were really relatable, were really validating. And I felt like I was going in really strong, knowing what I'd experienced, knowing what it was called now and giving it a name. And then he just kind of said with this very kind of concerned and I'm really worried about you sort of way, I think you've got this wrong somehow. We've got to try and work out what's happened that's made you think this. And it's really confusing.
I feel angry for you.
Yeah, because then you think, but I know what's caused this. Why aren't you just hearing what I'm saying? I'm telling you what's caused it. You don't have to work that bit out. Like, that's not what I want. I want you to figure out. I want you to try and, take some responsibility for it. Help me, validate this for me, or just tell me that you are sorry, but not go, well, how could this have happened? Let's try and find
and how
an
can
answer.
I blame? Well, it's not just how could this have happened. It's how can I make this a you problem and not me?
Yeah.
Right? It's so invalidating. And I feel angry for you in the injustice of that, like the futile attempt of please just see me. And I'm not asking for a parade, and I'm not asking for you to, put your life on the line for me. I'm asking you to just say, I'm really sorry, I could have done better.
Yeah.
I should have protected you more. I shouldn't have given a 21-year-old responsibility of 2 children that weren't hers when I was the 39-year-old man and more than able to be the parent on my own.
Yeah.
Right? There's a real grief in this of your almost unveiling of him. I can really sense that kind of almost, it feels a bit mixed, actually. It feels a bit like a relief and a grief. And I don't know if that's my projection, and I absolutely could be mine, and I'm totally willing to own that. But almost like the relief being oh, well, this makes a bit more sense now why he didn't step in. And then obviously the grief of him not stepping in. Well,
yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think since I've had these conversations with him and seeing how he's reacted to them, it has made me kind of think back and really look at how he has always behaved, and realize that I just had this idea of him as being this really lovely, caring, kind person, but it was kind of shielding the reality, which was that he wasn't really doing anything for anyone that wasn't benefiting him. He just he wanted us to love him, so he only did the things that would make us love him, which was the fun stuff. He kind of kept away from any kind of conflict or anything that was difficult. And as a result, I've kind of had these blinkers on for years, thinking he's just like the best guy. And now it's kind of, it's all,
how do you feel about that?
Kind of fall away.
Wow, yeah.
It made me feel really awful about my mum, actually, because I think, I mean, becoming a mum myself and realising obviously just how hard it is raising babies certainly went a long way to me appreciating more what my mum did for me when we were little, but also realising that my dad really didn't do a lot of the kind of grunt work of the parenting, but kind of acts like he is a really great parent. And it made me really feel for her that she did so much and she didn't really get a lot of recognition or appreciation back, because we were both, me and my brother, too busy saying how wonderful our dad was and how much we can't wait to spend more time with him.
Sure. Of course you were. So, of course you were. If you're scared of rejection, of saying no, have no idea how to trust people, you're not alone, and you don't have to heal alone either. That's what the Hub is for. It's a membership community designed for survivors just like you. Every month we dive into powerful courses, we hold live calls and connect in a supportive, understanding space so you can break free from the past and build healthy, fulfilling relationships. Maybe it's time to stop surviving and instead start thriving. Visit jointhehub.ac today using the code POD20 to get £20 off your first month's membership. I can't wait to see you there. Take care. Bye. Is there guilt there that you did that? Is there some guilt from?
Yeah, I mean, I feel guilty, but I don't. I also know that I was a child, and children don't they're not going to recognise what parents do, and they shouldn't, in my opinion. Your children shouldn't be going around thanking you for being parents necessarily.
No, I agree. But there is a point at which, and I don't know what your relationship with your mum is like, but there is there's a testament to her in the fact that you retained that image, in that she wasn't verbally criticising him as far as as far as you know, kind of thing. As far as I know, there's, because the fact that she, as the parent doing all the grunt work, and I'm making an assumption, so by all means correct me, wasn't at least saying enough for you to be impacted by it. Oh my God, I can't believe your father, and how could he's left me doing all this work, and and that would have been very difficult, I imagine, for her. But I'm interested to know, whether or not the assumption is right or not.
My mum and I have had some conversations only in recent years about my dad and about what things were like when we were little. My mum never ever said anything negative about my dad or my stepmom in my childhood. She was always extremely positive about him, and never moaned or complained, especially not to me or to us. I now know that when they were married, he did not treat her very well at all, and I believe that I think that there's a lot of maybe damage there for her done by him, maybe done by her own upbringing, where she felt that she was kind of deserved not very good treatment. And I think whatever it is that's made me always see him as this great guy, I think she had the same thing for a really long time. And kind of, he was just able to just not treat her very well at all. And she never saw him as a bad guy, even though he was behaving in a way that was really not okay. I mean, as an example, something that I only found out. Go on. Something I only found out a couple of years ago was that before my mum and dad divorced, my dad started having an affair with another woman who he then moved into our house along with her 2 children and her mother. And my mum ended up looking after me and my brother and her 2 children and her elderly mother while he was having an affair with this woman in our house.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that was. And
did your mum know that he was having the affair?
Yes, he did. Or no? Yeah, she knew.
So her boundaries are tricky as well. Then, at least they were then. I don't know now.
Yeah.
Obviously, but...
Well, and when I kind of asked her, like, how on earth did that happen? Like, how did you know, did you say anything? And she said, well, I think he thought that I wasn't very supportive of him, so I didn't want to say no. I think he felt like I needed to just support him more and let him do the things he wanted to do, because it was something to do with, I think, him and the woman were kind of working together. And so that was kind of his reason for her being in the house. But then what they were actually doing was having an affair. It's really complicated.
Okay. Well, I'm a bit... I suppose I'm sitting in a bit of a nervous space. I'm going to kind of just own that, because I'm fearful of what I might say being how that's going to impact you longer term. And this is the danger of these episodes and this job and what I'm doing, in that we get one session. Of course, we do all the aftercare and stuff, and I'm accessible to you after we finish recording, and it's not like we just like cut you off and off you go kind of thing. I'm available. There is, and then we send resources and things to you afterwards. I'm nervous because the reason I'm nervous I'm hearing some really very manipulative behaviour from your father.
Yeah.
Really very toxic, in that, look at how he's positioned himself on a pedestal. He's got everybody idolising him, and his sort of manipulation of your mother in terms of his gaslighting of her. You don't support me enough. Let me move in this woman, her children and her mother, and you have to look after all of them whilst I'm off having a relationship with her. And you're not allowed to challenge me on it.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to today, when you're saying, Dad, all this stuff happened to me, you didn't protect me and it hurt me. And his response is, well, let's find why it's somebody else's fault, and let's exempt me from responsibility, but also stop it because you're hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
So you've learned very, very young to protect his feelings above your own, above everything, above everyone and everything else, that you're not allowed to hold him accountable. I'm wondering what you're feeling right now, because I'm conscious of what I've just said being heavy.
No, I think it's actually that, it's the first time that I've said all this to somebody else who's then kind of put that all together and said it back. And I it's really, I think what I found really hard is sort of slowly unpicking and unpacking this stuff, and having these little bombshells like the thing my mum told me, and kind of looking back and seeing things, but nobody seems to. I've never met a single person that doesn't think that my dad is this wonderful person. So it's really hard to kind of get to that on my own. So having somebody say to me, listen to what you're saying, listen to what this person sounds like. Do you think that is a wonderful person that everyone should be idolizing? No, I don't. But it's almost like this kind of collective, like silent agreement that everyone's just thought, kind of gone, no, he's wonderful, let's just keep saying everybody loves him and nobody's going to question that. When
you say everyone, who is saying that?
So he's always been I grew up in quite a small town. He's very involved in the community. He's always been, organised lots of events, gets very involved with things. He's very popular. He teaches, and all his students have always seemed to love him. I think compared to like someone who does kind of a normal office job who you might not ever see, their colleagues or people who have worked with them, I feel like I've come into contact with lots of people who have spent time with my dad, and I've always had people kind of say to me, he's such a wonderful guy, he's so lovely,
right?
Because he seems to, he knows a lot of people, and he gets involved in a lot of things. So it's just always felt like everybody thinks like he's really popular and he's really well loved. My brother, who I don't really want to talk about because I feel like he's still got a very close relationship with my dad, and I've tried not to involve him. But what I will say is that, he very much idolizes my dad still.
Okay.
They're very close.
So he's very much in denial or something. Okay.
So, and I think,
so
you're
the only one that sees
it. It feels like that. That's how
your mum
feels.
sees it. Your mum
My mum
sees
sees it, but it feels like she's only just kind of felt able to say some of these things.
Yeah. Well, for the same reason as you, that everyone seems to adore him, so she's scared to speak up.
And I think maybe that's it, that she's not felt able to say that to anyone.
So let me ask you a different question. Well, let me just do some exploration around that. And I'll explain it afterwards, actually. Okay. How many very close, intimate friends does your father have that he regularly sees, and has in his space and goes to their space and shares spare time with?
Probably a few, like 2 or 3. They have quite a big social circle, but in terms of like close friends, probably a few. Yeah, 2 or 3 people.
And those are people that would come over to the house all the time, or they would go to their houses. And are they deep, intimate relationships? Like, is there emotional vulnerability in those relationships?
I'm not sure if... I don't know. I know that they spend time together. I know that they, in terms of the amount of time that they spend with certain friends, or he spends with certain friends, I'd assume that they're close relationships. But I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how closely, what they talk about or things like that.
Okay. So you don't know those friends as well?
They were always around when I was growing up, so they were kind of... So yeah, I do know them, but I have been quite distanced from my parents and the town that I grew up in for quite a while because of this.
But you did know them when you were younger?
Yeah.
And you would... Okay, and then... So there's 2 or 3 of those people. This is going to sound really callous, but if you wouldn't mind try to answer it. If you were to look at it from a zoomed out view, how would those friends benefit from the relationship with your father? If they do.
I don't know really.
And the reverse could be true. How would your father benefit from the friendship with those people?
I don't really know. I guess the more people that he's friends with, the more it helps his reputation as.
So the close friends,
really
have
sure.
any of them? Well, have any of them got status in the community, money, connections, networks?
No, not really. Actually, no.
Okay,
no,
that's cool. It's just. Okay, and are there any people-pleasing behaviours from them, from the friends?
Yeah, I think possibly yes.
Okay.
Just offering to help out with lots of things and always being there.
Oh wait,
yeah,
so
I
your
think
dad
maybe,
benefits because they help out and they...
I suppose, yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do always seem, I don't know. I suppose in some ways, yeah, I'm not really sure. Sorry.
No, don't worry. What's happening for you right now? There's something happening.
I
Hang on.
just, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where we're going, and whether,
Well,
yeah,
I'll tell you because I don't want to make you feel unsafe. One of the things that can happen when we've put the people on a pedestal for a very, very long time, particularly our parents, is, and even if we know that our parent is not very nice and they've convinced us so strongly that we are the only one that has any kind of problem with them, their behaviour and everything else, their treatment of us. When we've been in those situations, what can happen is we believe it. And so particularly if, for example, you've got that very critical type of parent and narcissistic parent I'm talking about, and they're kind of, anytime you complain about it, well, nobody else has got a problem with me, you're the only problem, so therefore you must be the problem, right? We internalize that and we believe that everyone thinks the same way thinks the way that we've been told that they think, and that we believe the kind of fairy tale of that everyone else adores me, you're the only one that doesn't, therefore you are the problem, right? Your vision is flawed because everybody else thinks I'm amazing.
yeah,
And what we can then do is reinforce that, what is a confirmation bias. It's a bias that we hold, and every time we see them being adored by someone, or someone says, oh, your dad's amazing, we reinforce that belief, right? So we're just constantly seeing evidence for what we already believe, and we reinforce that. But if we zoom out and actually look at, so here's your dad, this really super popular guy, but he's only got 2 or 3 close friends.
yeah,
That doesn't track to me. Like, there feels like to me that there might be more people than that in a close inner circle if he's super duper popular and has all this contact with lots of other people, that maybe he would have more people integrated. Then on top of that, the idea that, you know, all these people love him, so his students all loved him. Well, I, first of all, can't believe that for a second, simply because just on statistics alone, we know that there's always going to be some children or students that get rubbed up the wrong way by a particular teacher, or there's a subject. And, you know, it might be that he was liked or well liked, but these are people that maybe are looking from a distance themselves and believing a similar narrative to you, that there's everyone adores him and I'm the only one that sees him. So I think it's that thing of just being really careful what we tell ourselves by looking at the evidence. So what I was trying to sort of explore with you was the evidence of that belief. And there are these 2 or 3 people that are close into his life, but maybe are people pleasers, which means they're also not going to hold him accountable, challenge him, call him out for various things. Because I've got a funny feeling, you know, Lucy, that he gets involved in all these projects and things and events or whatever, but I imagine a lot of the work he's sort of given is delegated to other people. I imagine that he doesn't actually do it an awful lot himself. And so he's got people around him that he knows he will do it for him, so that he can abdicate his responsibility. That is a total hypothesis, but you've a little smile on your face, and I'm wondering whether I've hit a nail maybe or not.
I think I just can't believe that I really have like had in my head that everybody loves him, and I've never thought, who is everybody?
Yes.
And maybe I have just got, I've just had this, I've just believed that, and it's not actually, that's not actually necessarily true. That's just what I've been made to believe, that he's,
What are you feeling right this minute?
I just feel kind of, like something's just kind of cracked, but in like in a good way. Like,
okay, good.
Just this veneer of,
his perfection.
Yeah.
The veneer of his perfection has cracked.
Because I've always thought he's really popular. He's got lots of friends, but when you sort of said, well, how many? There's not actually. It's not lots. There's sort of people that he knows. They're not actually friends that are really close.
And that's what I was trying to establish.
Yeah,
that bit.
There's just sort of
people that he knows, or people that are really close, best buds, share anything with, call in a crisis at 3 a.m. type people.
And actually, when I think about it, over the years, there's been people who've kind of been around for a while, and then they've just they're not their friends anymore, or they're not there anymore.
Right.
And I wonder if maybe there have been people who have kind of got to know him and then seen this and then run away. And
guaranteed.
And I've not really thought of that. I've just thought, there's always been loads of people around. Therefore, he's really
because
popular.
that's the thing, right? And there's the confirmation bias. I believe this thing, so I only take in evidence that reinforces that belief. Whether it's a good or bad belief for me, I keep reinforcing the belief. And actually, in a funny way, this belief was a good thing. And do you know why it might have been a helpful belief for you to have?
No, tell me.
Well, just for a moment, what would happen if you stopped, if you had, not now necessarily, but if like 10 years ago you hadn't believed that, if you had stopped believing that everyone loves him?
Then I might have started questioning why, or...
Yeah, and then what would have happened?
I don't know.
Well, if I said to you, if I ask you about the grief that you experienced when you realised he was not who you had thought he was, what was that like?
So I suppose that that maybe if I'd started to question that, then I would have had to experience that sooner, and I wouldn't have wanted to. So I probably would have just continued to deny it, even if there wasn't any evidence for it.
Yeah. So there's this thing of, if you had let go of that belief, you can't blame yourself anymore.
Mm.
And actually, you can't be the one that is the problem, and therefore you can't be the one that can fix it.
Yeah.
And it would mean losing this fun dad image. And that's a huge grief.
Yeah.
Because right now, and this is reductive, but it's that thing of evil stepmother. You know, that Disney version of the evil stepmother. And I'm not for a second avoid, she is accountable and everything else. But let's just look at how squeaky clean he was in that whole dynamic until you started realizing how he didn't protect you. And because you only came to that understanding because you were looking at her behavior.
Yeah.
Right? And so he was the safe parent for you. You needed one of them to be safe. You needed one of them to be okay.
Yeah.
And to let go of that hope means accepting that both of them created that dynamic. You know, he was responsible. Actually, I'm going to say he was more responsible. She was 21.
Yeah.
And I'm not for a second saying it's okay. She was an adult and all of that stuff. But she was 21 and he was 39. And that was something else I was going to mention when we were talking about his friendship circle, If he was this popular and this liked, then, and this is, I know we talked about the age gap thing. Why did a 39-year-old man need to marry a 21-year-old?
Yeah.
What was that sigh, Lovey? What happened there?
I've kind of wondered that, and it makes me feel uncomfortable to try and to think about, like my dad's love life and what made that happen. But it does come up as a question, like, why would you want to do that? Why? It's just so strange, and I don't have an answer for it, and I just don't understand. But it makes me feel, it just makes me feel uncomfortable, like, why did he want to marry somebody that young? What? And it was somebody, and I know now, again, this is not something I knew for a long time, but he'd known my stepmom since she was a lot younger, and I don't know how in touch they were, or it's all a bit hazy because I was very young, so I don't know like how they got together exactly. I know that him and my mum split up, and then my stepmom just kind of appeared, but they had known each other for quite a long time before. And there are kind of questions that I almost don't really want answers to about how this all kind of came about, but why they ended up in a relationship. And it's just, I don't know, it's difficult subject.
What's your fear? What are you scared of finding out?
That maybe they had a relationship when she was younger than she should have been,
right?
Like underage, or
right.
That I just don't know. I don't know. But I think because, I always knew that there was an age gap between my stepmom and my dad, and that it wasn't, I definitely don't feel like I was able to ask questions about that when I was growing up. I never would have asked them a question. I don't think I would have been, I don't think they would have wanted me to. It was just sort of an accepted thing. That it took me a long time to actually kind of look at that information and think, I cannot, I can't imagine being with someone that much older when I'm that age. I can't imagine wanting to be with someone that much younger. Now I'm almost at the age that my dad was when he married my stepmom. And just the more I think about it, the stranger it is, and
the more uncomfortable it gets.
It makes me feel uncomfortable, and it does make me think, was there just more going on there than I know? And I don't know.
And then whether or not you want to know what that was.
Exactly. Part of me, because now I'm kind of feel like I'm starting to see who my dad actually is rather than who I always thought he was. A part of me almost does want to know absolutely everything. I want to know everything, and I probably never will, but now that I've started this, I want to know as much as I can. I want to understand,
because
I feel like I've just been brainwashed into sort of protecting this person who's just made everybody else responsible for things that they should have been responsible for, and I don't want to do that anymore.
So you want to know the whole truth so you can hold him fully accountable for everything.
And I think also so that I don't slip back into believing him anymore and falling for him being nice anymore, because I still do that when we have conversations.
You said in your in your email, in your application, I've got it here. You said also the gulf between identifying the behaviours and being able to actually detach emotionally from their effects.
Yeah.
And this kind of it's this sort of thing of being able to see in the moment what the intent of the behaviour is. Like what the motivation for the behaviour is. What does it gain for them? And being able to hold firm and let go of the fear of upsetting him.
Yeah.
And so if I could offer something that might just break that a little bit. Okay. This does take a bit of time. It's also an active process, this kind of idea that we're not responsible for his feelings. I mean, even that, just that kind of, I'm giving the responsibility of me to literally everyone else, but I refuse to take any of it for myself.
Yeah.
Right? My life experience is dependent on how you worship me. That's what he says and communicates all the time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think there's something about trying to remember that he is the adult, he's the parent. And if your child comes to you and says, Mummy, you really upset me when you said X, Y, Z, how do you respond?
I want to listen. Well, I do. I listen to what they say and I apologise for them feeling, for having hurt them. And I want to understand what I've done.
What about when you behave in a way that is not in line with who you want to be as a parent and they don't say anything?
I apologised.
Right.
Even if they're like, what?
Yeah. Like, why?
Because I feel bad that I've gone against what I believe I should do in that moment. When
my children come and say to me, Mummy, you made me sad or mad or whatever they might say, I don't go, oh, well, that makes me really sad. It must have been something that happened in the environment that wasn't anything to do with me at all.
Yeah.
Your father is asking to be the child.
Yeah.
In your relationship. He's asking you to parent him. And I want you to just think about the injustice of that for a moment. That, okay, you had a father who took you swimming and doing fun things, but you didn't have a father who was emotionally available and reliable and predictable, and he was not supportive of anybody around him in any way, shape or form. He was just entitled. He just did the bits he want. And meanwhile, your mother is married to a man who apparently also does not want to help in any way, shape or form with parenting, running the show in terms of making sure that you can function in terms of school and everything else. And you're absolutely, he is sitting pretty.
Yeah.
Everyone else is running around making his life as easy as possible to avoid hurting him.
Yeah.
And when they do hold him responsible, he immediately gaslights, dismisses, minimises, denies, and then flips it back to say it's a problem with you.
Yeah.
He moved a woman, 2 children, and the woman's mother into the family home. This is gaslighting at work, that he could get away with that. He moved her into the family home to be able to carry out an affair with the woman. Yeah. And your mother's fear of upsetting him was so great that she didn't complain about it, object. She allowed it. And had she complained or objected, I suspect he would have said what you said. You're so unsupportive. I'm just doing my best. They're having a bad time, blah, blah, blah. You're paranoid.
Yeah.
right? You're selfish.
Yeah.
All of those things. The reality is your father, and this is quite hard. It looks from where I'm sitting, and I also don't have the full context, so I want to own that and keep that present.
Okay.
But to me, it looks like he is a puppet master.
Mm.
That he has manipulated everybody into enabling him.
Yeah.
He's used your stepmother to be the disciplinarian when you're with her, or when you were with them.
Yeah.
The idea as a single parent of bringing another like a step parent into my family unit and then allowing them to be disciplinarian in a horrible way to my children is abhorrent to me, personally. The idea of abdicating my parental responsibilities is abhorrent.
Yeah.
And, you know, I get it. It would be nice sometimes, not always, to the idea of sharing the parenting load. I do think there's definitely bits that I miss out on. But I will not, absolutely not, allow my children to be bullied by another adult that I have brought into the house. Right?
Yeah.
Your father prioritizes himself above you over and over again, because the fact that you said to me, you've just known forever that you mustn't say, "You hurt me, Daddy," means that you learnt that almost pre-verbal, I would say.
Mm.
If you've said no, Daddy, when he's gone for a cuddle or a kiss or something, and he's gone, "Oh, you're going to make me so sad."
Yeah.
You know, what's happening right now for you?
Just that this has just been something that's been so strong, and it's just been there forever, and trying to unpack it all, and it's so difficult. But then I'm like hearing you sort of describe what I've just told you back to me makes it sound, it's probably going to sound ridiculous, it makes it sound so much worse than when I said it to you, because because to me it's something, you know, I was shocked when my mum told me, but then I've almost like convinced myself that it's not that big a thing, and the way my mum told me it wasn't that big a thing, it was just something that happened. And so hearing it back, it's like hearing it for the first time, or as if it was happening to somebody else, and thinking, God, that is awful. But I can't believe that I've just kind of accepted that and not heard it for how bad it is, actually.
Well, your mum has got a part in that too, because look how she minimises her own experience.
Yeah.
And I don't know for her whether or not it's a thing of not wanting to upset your relationship with him, not wanting to be pulled into it, also wanting her own denial to stay in place, or, you know, I don't know what her motive might be in that, but she has done that. She has minimised how it impacted her to you. I don't know if we need to know what the intent behind that was, but the impact means that for you it's just been normalised. It's acceptable, you know? But actually, that's actually obscene. That's obscene. He brought in a woman he was having an affair with and like made your mother look after her children and her mother.
Yeah.
That is the most entitled, well, no, it's not the most entitled thing I've heard, but it's getting up there. Like it's really, really gross. Other people are there to serve him, his needs, his wants, and his emotional experience.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, isn't it, Lucy? We started talking about hope, and I'm wondering where you're sort of feeling with that now. where hope is coming in or not coming in, because it doesn't feel like we've actually talked about hope a lot.
I feel, well, I feel like this has really helped me to see more clearly who it is that I'm actually looking at.
Okay,
because I
good,
feel like
okay.
and I think I have still been trying to almost protect the image that I had of him, even when I've come on here to say, like, I want to try and stop doing this. I feel like I've still been doing it, and maybe I need to talk about this with more people and hear other people saying it back to me, and or just imagining that this is somebody else that I'm talking to about them and how I would feel about it if I heard about it from someone else, and maybe just keep doing that to try and to break this idea of, because I do feel now like I'm just protecting him, and I'm not, that's not helping me in any way. It's not helping anyone except for him.
No, exactly. Because you've all been conditioned to collude in that protection. He's created you all to be his force field. And
so I think even though we've not necessarily talked directly about killing the hope, or dealing with the hope, I think we have helped with that, definitely.
Yeah. I think you have to remember why the hope is there, what it's trying to protect you from.
Yeah.
Because, that toxic hope is denial, and denial is avoidance of grief, avoidance of pain and hurt and reality, which obviously then brings grief. And for you to notice this and identify it, and maybe even calling it out, you're aware on some level of the rupture that's going to cause in your other relationships close to him. So your brother perhaps, or, whoever else might be around him that it's that thing of the cost of speaking our truth. And if you believe that you're the only one who sees it, although, as we've done, we've challenged that belief, the fear of that is huge. And so we sit in that space of hope and hope and hope and hope that we've got it wrong. And that maybe if I just explain it enough, if I just say it. And it's interesting because every time you've approached, even though you're saying, you didn't protect me, you're still saying it's her fault, not his. And he still can't concede that tiny little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And so there must be a level of awareness for you somewhere that whatever you take to him is going to be denied, that he is never going to validate your experience. And there is a hope in that as well. And so what I suppose is knowing that hope, identifying where all the places hope stands, and what it will cost you to let go of those hopes, and then maybe sort of breaking that reality open a bit. But it may be that you need extra support doing that with the therapist, with somebody who's not in the system. And I cannot explain that or emphasize that more or too heavily, that if you bring this into the system, the family system, I mean, the denial, gaslighting, accusation, the repercussions of doing that are going to be so vast that it's possibly going to really damage you and your kind of mental health. And so I would just be very, very mindful of where you are sharing this, that they are safe people who you do that with. Yeah.
Okay.
Lucy, before we wrap up, was there anything I haven't answered that you wanted to talk about, that I need to, anything else you need from me?
No, I want to say thank you. Like, this has It was really, I feel like this was a really good decision. And I'm really glad that I applied to be on here, and I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I feel like it has actually been really, really helpful.
I'm really glad. I'm so glad. Lucy, thank you. And I'm slightly sad on my own behalf that we didn't get to talk about parenting and neurodiversity and stuff, because you had mentioned that in your email too. But I know so many. But, you know, notice, like your stepmother, repeating patterns. That's the thing that we have to be careful of, that we are not protecting our children from things like disappointment or projecting emotions onto them. Anyway, that is a whole different conversation. But just learning this about your father is only going to serve them well.
Yeah.
Your children. Okay?
Okay.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Lucy, for being so brave, so honest, for sharing so much with me and us, the rest of the audience. And as ever, I guess all that remains to be said is take care. Bye.
Bye.